You're listening to an Accent Productions podcast.
Okay, Rachel, PG-13. PG-13.
No, PG, Rachel, PG.
What?
We're rolling.
Okay, welcome to Moody&D. My name is Rachel Sanders. I will have the rest of the table introduce themselves.
I'm Reese Amstutz. I'm the DM for Moody&D.
And I'm Christian Majewski, also known as Klaus.
Sweet. This is a new series called Moody&D GoneRogue. We have some players from the original campaign of Moody&D, and now it's time for open questions.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of co-host this for now, Rachel.
Sorry.
And I. No, you're good. It's a new show. We're developing the concept, and that's just one of the best parts about this is it's kind of improv.
We're figuring it out.
Yeah.
Slowly.
We could almost call this Moody&D unscripted, if you will, but also the original show's not scripted either. So essentially, what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss elements of the show, character questions, etc. Each of us have prepared a series of questions. Today we're discussing episodes 1 through 4, and we're going to roll d20s to determine who asks their questions first. So, shall we all roll a d20?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Oh,
shoot.
Nat 20.
Nat 20! Dang it. Okay, Christian, you're up first. Do you have a question from episode 1 or no?
I have a bunch of questions relating to
Rachel, I
episode
should be
1.
letting you do all the host stuff.
I know, dude.
Sorry. I do it naturally. I'll stop.
Stop it.
Ah,
Do you have any questions for episode 1?
Not really for episode 1 per se, but I have a question that I did want to kind of bring up because some people might be wondering about it.
Bring it.
It's kind of a question 0. Haha, pun. Why D&D? Why do we like D&D, and why did we decide to do a D&D podcast?
So is this question directed?
This is like
the two of us, sort of.
It's kind of directed at you.
Okay.
Because the podcast was originally your idea. I kind of.
I had nothing to do with it.
The question, this is actually a fun little piece of XN radio
I
history.
didn't even know that.
The show was not my idea. The show was Austin Murphy and Ryan Hansen's idea, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
Austin Murphy is the guy who does Collateral Creatives on XN Radio. You should absolutely check that out. It is on Spotify as well as alongside Moody&D. And then Ryan, he's our president.
Long live Ryan.
Of XN Radio. And so it was their idea, and I just happened to hear through the grapevine that someone wanted to start a D&D podcast, and I said, tell me to talk to whoever I need to talk to in order to become the DM of that show.
That's honestly hilarious because I came to like the meeting right after that one, and Ryan just kind of dropped D&D podcast. I stopped him, didn't even let him finish his sentence, and I was like, I'm on it.
Yeah, so
Assert yourself.
yeah, so we really didn't it wasn't my idea, but I absolutely loved the idea because it's a wonderful art form. Like for me, the whole reason I want to get involved is I love D&D, but I love it, and I talked a little bit about this on Collateral Creatives. But I love it as an art form, as a communicative community storytelling art form, and so that's one of the reasons that I absolutely love it, and the reason that I just hopped right on it the second I was in. But now I'm curious, for you, what about this was just so instantaneously?
Well, I feel like the surface answer would definitely be, I've been looking for a group for like 2 years, and then finally something happened. But the truth is, why D&D for me is, I've always from since I was a kid, I was looking for kind of a place where I could let my imagination flow. And I believe in imagination as being the ultimate creator, because God gave us our imagination kind of in suit of his ability to create. That's at least how I kind of look at it. And D&D is the place where we can let our imagination run wild. And I feel like it's D&D and role-playing games in general, it's just such a formula that people have stigmatized, and yet it's so amazing in its just art form, kind of like what you said. And so that's why I love D&D, because I can create a character who is kind of like me, but is not me, and kind of explore the world through their eyes.
Yeah.
I don't have much of a connection to D&D. I didn't know it was an active thing until I probably met Reese. And he's like, I play D&D. And I was like, oh, you're a royal nerd.
Guilty as charged.
Royal nerd.
I am king of nerds.
But he told me all about these imagination parts, like what you went into, and I was like, oh, I did that as a kid, and it's kind of fun to think about, because I would play imaginary with my friends, and they would have a character like mine. I'm like, no, you can't have that. That's my thing. And so it's just like how it all connects and just like working that inner child in you again and just embracing it.
Yeah. Embracing that inner child is also just a really weird element of Christian culture today, because even if you look at Christians, especially due to I talk about this all the time, the Satanic Panic in the 1980s, everybody was afraid of basically everything, and imagination was capital amongst the things that we generally feared.
That's so weird to think about.
It is really weird to think about, but I even know people who have, I've talked to them and they're like, yeah, I'm rediscovering the concept of imagining and imagination as a good thing, because imagination used to be a bad thing in their minds.
And
so
that's
weird.
kind of understandable, because humans are terrible.
Yes.
And
Amen.
where does that come from? It comes from our imagination. We can imagine. Klaus is not far from that.
Yeah.
He is a concept of my imagination. The things that he does came from my head.
Yeah.
Right?
Be careful how far you go with Klaus. I have questions for him.
Oh, don't worry. I'm not just touching upon it, but kind of showing the concept that obviously we're going to be afraid of our imagination because we're terrible people.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that everything about it is bad.
Yeah.
Right?
It's also weird to think about, because I'm assuming both of you, I know you did. You grew up in a Christian home, I'm assuming.
Nope.
Oh, you and I came from similar backgrounds then. Because, my mom and my dad always encouraged, use your imagination. Figure out what you want. Create a world you want. And then I came here and I was like, no, don't think about those things. Those are evil. And I'm like, at this point, I'm a Christian. And I'm like, no. God was created when he created us. Yes, we're in his image and there's a baseline of good. And yes, we're narrowly evil. But we have to channel that imagination to understand what it means to be a creator. You created Klaus. You're proud to have Klaus. Even though he's a bit of a butt some days. I'm sorry.
One way to say it.
I'm
filtered.
not gonna say
I'm
no.
trying.
Hey.
There are
PG,
many words to
PG.
describe Klaus. Magnificent is one of them, I'm sure.
Okay.
I thought that was his word for himself. That's a self-description.
I don't know if God would describe us as magnificent, so I'm glad you're not God.
Well, I think there are people who would also...
Dispute that.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are definitely people who dispute the God would look at us and call us magnificent.
I think.
I mean, he at the very least, he looked at us and called us good.
That's it.
When he made us, he was like, that's
Actually,
good.
even very good.
And
That's
then we
true.
fell.
That is true.
And then we
Yeah.
had sin. And he's like, now y'all embrace evil. Good job, guys.
You mucked it up. Come on.
I leave you alone. No, he never did.
He's still here. He walks by us
Oh, yeah.
daily.
Yeah, no, and the funny thing is with what you were saying, one of the things that we most adore about God is his creative intent. The 7-day creation process is one of the greatest Christian stories, right?
Yeah.
And yet for some reason when we are trying to be creative in the image of God, Imago Dei,
This is a theology podcast. Sorry, guys.
Hey, that's half of what we do here, though. 'Cause
that is very true.
we're giving legitimacy to the concept of using Dungeons and Dragons as a method to convey the gospel.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing here.
The gospel does not have limits.
No, it does not.
No, but does not.
D&D does not stop it, guys.
Come on.
Neither does sin.
What? What just happened?
I don't know.
He said
Okay.
something that will scare some very interesting Christians.
I want to know.
No, you heard him.
I
He's-
did?
Yeah, I
Oh.
just said sin.
Oh.
We don't talk about sin.
No. I'm not even sure we can technically air something like that because of
Sorry.
copyrights or whatever.
I
don't
didn't
know.
finish it. It was
I
less
don't
than
know
5
how
seconds.
copyrights work. I'm just going to put that out there.
We're also not
idea.
making money off of this.
No, we're not. That's true. We're not selling it, so we're good.
I also did
So-
for less than 5 seconds, and it was definitely off pitch.
Yeah, it was.
My voice is off pitch.
I'm a bachelor's of music major, okay? I'm going to say when something's off pitch, okay?
I think he judges my
Reese
voice.
Reese is being nice right now, guys.
I am being kind right
He struggles with that some days. Just kidding.
now. I try to be nice. I try.
Then I talk.
That's true.
Being nice is not an easy thing, I know.
No, it's not.
I agree. And I'm literally giving up making jokes about people for Lent.
That's awesome.
I think people do stuff on purpose now,
Mhm.
and I can't say anything.
Well, I don't do stuff on purpose. I did that before.
Okay, should we roll again?
Let's do it.
I love it. All right. I swear if you roll highest again.
I got 8.
You rolled the highest again.
Can we
All
not
right.
allow him to roll? or
Yeah,
just
how
you
about
and
that?
You know what? Sure, let's do that. Yeah.
7.
Okay, you ask your question. Do you got one for episode 1 or not?
I do not. I'm going
Okay.
straight into episode 2.
Okay, go
and
for it.
It's for Klaus.
Okay.
One of the first few interactions between you and the characters were you being scrutinized by the rest of them. Do you feel like this helped your character develop his want for power and respect, or fed into his idea of false authority?
Such a good question.
Very good
Also,
question.
talking to your mic when you ask questions.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna scoot this closer.
You can also lift up your chair. If that
Yeah, or like drop the mic if it's too high for you.
Why the heck do you do that?
Those ones you can't drop.
You can't drop 'em?
That's
I
as
thought-
short as
Can
it
I put
gets.
this in my
Okay.
lap?
Yes.
Okay.
I take these things off the table all the time.
But I'm doing
How
this.
dare you? Yeah, I mean that's a very good question. Big disclaimer here. I dreaded listening to the first 2 episodes, and I
You're
listen.
so funny.
So as much of as stupid as that might sound, I listen to Moody&D every week.
That's
Same.
awesome.
I listen to
That's
the
not
to the episode.
stupid.
That's good.
Some people were like, "Wait, you're listening to your own voice?" And I was like, "Yes, of course I'm
You
listening
have
to
to
my
know your
own
content
voice."
to keep going.
That
Yeah.
does mean though that one of our listeners on the counter thing is just
It's me.
him. That stinks, but okay.
But yeah, in my original thing, I never listened to episode 1 and 2
Oh.
because the concept of Klaus that I brought to the table on session 0 was completely different from what he ended up being.
Oh yeah,
I love how he turned out, though.
Yeah.
I love it too. And
he
so
was very different though.
he was he okay. A little bit of a backstory on Klaus. The concept for the character started with the voice.
That's it. That's it. You started with the voice.
Seriously, I started with
Really?
the voice. When my wife and I, we first moved to the United States, we had to quarantine for 2 weeks, and we had just finished our second watch through of Scrubs. So we were looking for a new show.
Okay.
And I saw on American Netflix that they had Vampire Diaries,
Oh my. No, get out.
okay.
a
keep
show I
going.
used to watch when I was like 15.
I loved that show.
And so I looked at it, and the edgy teenager in me said, "Hey, Katya, want to watch this with me?" And so we started watching it, and we kind of fell in love with it. And I especially fell in love with one character,
It's leaving the show. Netflix.
Klaus.
Actually?
Yes, and when they first name dropped him, the funny thing was for me, in my mind, growing up with like watching German TV and stuff like that,
Yeah.
Klaus is always kind of like the funny old guy name that you
Right.
give someone. So they name drop him, they don't show him, they don't show any of his actions, and I just turn to my wife and I go, yes, I am Klaus, the German vampire, quiver before my power. And that's it.
That's where Klaus.
That's where Klaus started.
I love Vampire Diaries so much more than before now.
Okay, so from there, how did you get to your race in your class then?
I love tieflings. I think that they're amazing, just flavor characters. And class, I was thinking, okay, how can I make that into a D&D character? How about I make a bard that inspires people by commanding them? Because he thinks that he's so much better than everybody else. So I went with bard.
That's hilarious.
And so yeah, I remember session 0, and it was interesting to me because I remember leaving that room absolutely fuming. I was so angry.
Yeah. Well, we had conversations about that.
We had a couple of conversations afterwards.
Uh-oh.
I was absolutely furious.
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't mad at Prof Mac, Sam, or Reese. Sure, I felt like in the beginning I felt a little like they were
Pushing it.
not necessarily pushing it, but like ganging up on me. And I felt like the little foreigner in the corner that doesn't really know what to do.
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, okay, obviously they're going to react that way because of the character that Klaus turned out to be.
Yeah.
Because I basically turned him into a Nazi. And
yeah, that was a big issue in the first episode. Look at episodes 1 and 2.
Let's just say that there is a couple.
I did a lot of editing on that
What?
episode.
I want to see those.
There were several occasions where we were like, Klaus is too close to a Nazi, and had a lot of the German accent is really what made it problematic.
Yeah.
Because he has, even in more recent episodes, he calls Bran fleshbag.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only that's because he has derogatory perspectives on certain races, and for him it's a lot of the naturally mundane races like humans.
Actually, it's
You get to decide whether you reveal any backstory.
I am
stuff
not
here.
gonna reveal anything.
Okay,
right
cool.
Here.
But he has things that appear to be derogatory, or even like looking at the in the first episode, there were several scenes where he was speaking with lizard folk and considered himself racially higher, and we had to edit that out because we realized with the German accent, now we've got problems.
And also,
so-
I didn't necessarily want it to sound that way.
Right.
That was not my
Precisely,
original
that
intent.
was never your intent. And so we had to adjust because we had to look at, okay, how are people going to receive this?
Yeah.
And then make adjustments so that it was actually fitting with what his intention was.
And so, kind of to answer your original question, Klaus's authoritative kind of demeanor was not always there, but it was definitely there long before he ever arrived at Kaizo. And so, them ganging up on him kind of just maybe didn't solidify, but perpetuated the idea of the fact that he can't trust them.
Okay.
Yep.
Reese?
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of based off of that, one of my questions I had listed here. I've got it listed, just the whole concept of, you've expressed before that Klaus believes he's evil, but you've also expressed before that he is not technically evil.
I keep going back and forth on that because even with his alignment, I know that he's somewhere in the lower right corner, but I can't pin him down.
Right. Somewhere in that like almost evil, neutral, but always chaotic sort of space.
That's the thing. I'm not even sure if he's always chaotic.
Okay, interesting.
Like,
Because he has like internalized laws and strictures, but or rather
for himself
Right, for
in
himself.
a way,
Right.
but they don't apply to anyone else.
Right, and that's the issue with the alignment system. Is it's it's more of a universal system for something that's very subjective.
So yeah, so I don't want to say that he's neutral. I also don't want to say that he's chaotic or evil.
Right.
So, but he's definitely somewhere in that lower
Right.
side of that spectrum.
Right. Precisely.
Yeah, and that also just kind of comes from, again, Klaus from TVD, from Vampire Diaries, because he is the ultimate vampire. He is the kind of amalgamation of all evil. At the end of the series, they even call him Klaus the Great Evil. And so, with my fascination of villains and a lot of things that I just love, and I really wanted Klaus to kind of be that presence.
yeah.
And later on, he becomes that, and you don't even know how happy that made me.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about later episodes, but yeah,
Yeah.
later he becomes that, and I was so happy.
Yeah. So can I ask? Because I've done something like this before. As a Christian who has a strong moral structure, who has strong moral sense, what is it like playing a character who believes he's evil, who makes decisions that are self-centered, who makes decisions that are not that do not imply Christian or good moral compass or system? What's that like, and how did you even make the decision to choose a character like that? That's a difficult thing to do.
I have to think about the answer without condemning myself.
Okay.
Screw it. Let's go. I don't have a very strong moral compass.
Okay.
I myself. I know
I would relate to that.
just from my past and from many things that I did in my past, conscience has never really been an issue for me.
Huh.
Same.
And so when I became a believer, a lot of my morality came from just sitting down, reading the Bible, and understanding, okay, this is what God deems as good. I don't, but
Interesting.
God does. So yeah, I don't have a very strong moral compass. A lot of my understanding of morality came from, as a Christian, when I already became a believer, sitting down, reading the Bible, and saying, okay, this is what God deems as good. This is what in His eyes is good. Because obviously society has their rules, but early on in my life, I realized society doesn't dictate anything. Anybody can do it, whatever they want. And so I really wanted to play an evil character. I wanted the evil character to still work in the campaign without being kind of a hinder for everybody else.
Yes, which I really appreciate as a DM because it's hard having an evil character in your party.
Yeah, I'm right now playing. I right now have a campaign that I'm running, and they're basically all murder hobos, and it's really difficult to kind of
Yeah,
balance
it's so
that.
hard. See, when players do things like that, I'm like, okay, fine. You're running from the police, and they're on your tail. for a very long time until you decide to change what you're doing.
Yeah, basically. And I'm probably going to do that with them, but
Yeah.
So kind of trying to answer your question, Klaus, especially as a Christian, as someone who is trying to keep that morality high for myself,
Yeah.
and I have certain convictions that I will never break, but I also have certain things that I will never be able to overcome in their full form.
Right. This side of heaven.
Yeah, Klaus is my way of just going ham.
Okay.
Klaus is my way of
Getting almost like the angst out a little bit.
in a way, but also an amazing case study between nature versus nurture, between so I'm sorry that my answers are so long, but
no, you're fine.
there's a lot of thoughts.
No, keep going.
There's this thing that I like to call the silent understanding of things words cannot express. It's that feeling, it's kind of the description that I give to that feeling that we have deep inside of us when we read a story or when we play a game or when we watch a movie, and it resonates with us, but we can't really put a label on it.
Yeah, I feel like what you're describing like really does pull what we've been talking about all together. Like we talked like why do we play D&D?
Mm-hmm.
It's because this is how we express. This is how we're able to get our words out, what we're thinking and feeling. And it's just like, how do we see? You and I have an off moral compass, is what I say, because I also didn't come from a Christian family. And it's like, now that I am one, how often do I do these good things by God's word, but I do it for my self-satisfaction, I'm a good person, and does that turn it into sin?
Yeah, that's also another thing, looking at. Yeah, see, I grew up in a Christian household, and so this is like a completely, foreign concept to me, a lack of a moral compass, and I'm the oldest. And so my moral compass is, I almost call it too strict. Because for me, my set of rules allows for basically no space outside of perfection. And so, we almost come from two opposite ends of the spectrum. And so I once built a character similar to Klaus who basically had, I intentionally built him with an incorrect moral system because I wanted to challenge, and I eventually had to leave that character because I just couldn't do it. But that's just what I was curious.
And for me, every single character I build always is either on the neutral or chaotic side. It's so hard for me to create a character that's good.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to play that.
Yeah, it's not intuitive.
And make it compelling.
Yeah, and that's a hard part with D&D is you have to, if you want to make a compelling story, both for you and for anybody in your party, and in this case for any listeners, you have to do something that you're familiar with, or at least vaguely familiar with. I talk about this all the time, but every D&D character anybody creates is either a fraction, reflection, or projection of themselves.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. And so I guess Klaus just kind of tickles that silent understanding of things words cannot express that I'm feeling inside of me, where I can kind of let the thoughts that are constantly in my mind that I know are evil, let them out and have no kind of real life repercussions because of it.
Yeah, to express that and get it out of you, but then also there is the element of Klaus does suffer consequences for the actions he takes.
Yep.
And so it's a space where you get to process through that, but then once again are reaffirmed in the what is declared to be right and wrong,
exactly,
by the social constructs of the game and by the reactions of the other players. It allows you to get that out of your head, but then it also reinforces what we know to be good and true.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to give the other players and you as a DM the chance to kind of perpetuate the gospel theme that we're going for.
Yeah.
I think, because sure, the villains are evil and they're always evil. What if one of your party members is evil?
Yeah.
What do you do with that? How do you reconcile that kind of person, or do you not reconcile them at all?
Yeah.
I feel like this idea really just points out in scripture, scripture says, everything will come to light. And I feel like you putting that in your character, it brings to light, I have this evil desire. That is what I know.
Yeah, which we all have. I mean, that's the natural intuition of every human.
And I just think it's a good picture. And I have no words. I love how this conversation's going.
Yeah. And one of the things I love the fact that nobody in the party created a perfect character. Because it's such a strong temptation of anybody creating a D&D character, especially those people who have naturally very strong moral compasses. It's such a natural drive to want to create a completely flawless character who is the idyllic hero. And absolutely none of you created that, which I love. You all came to the table with your character's baggage, with the internal backdrive of aiming to see that baggage worked out in the game and to see that narrative come to full completion in reflection of the gospel and reflection of consecration and sanctification and all that.
Exactly, and that's honestly also one of the parts that I think is beautiful about D&D. It gives you a chance to create a beautiful character story.
Yep.
That's why I always fit better as a player than as a DM.
Yeah.
Because I love creating a character that is complex.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and that's one of the things that, I mean, even looking at Klaus, like you talk about, like some people would immediately question, well, if you're already saved, what's the value in, essentially replaying it? And one of the things that I say to that is immediately, well, look at Dungeons and Dragons, an inherently, or not necessarily inherently, but typically secular field. This is a way for us to share the gospel, share the concepts of the gospel with those who otherwise would not engage with the gospel. One of the things that I feel fairly strongly about is the fact that the Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop RPG community is relatively considered could relatively be considered an unreached people group. Because ever since the Satanic Panic, Christians have essentially written them off as something we don't engage with. And this is a way that we can actually show them in a way that, like, up until this point, it wouldn't necessarily have been obvious, up until the airing of this episode, that Moody&D is a Christian show. Now, obviously, we've got the name Moody tacked on top of it. We've got the name Moody Bible Institute associated with it. And so, obviously, everybody who watches the show and knows anything about Moody understands that we're a Christian show. But even those outside of us, like, very quickly when we released Moody&D, I saw followers who I don't think they're Christian at all. And they watch the show. They listen to the show. And this is a way for us to show the gospel through that.
And I was a listener from the beginning, because that's how I got to know Reese a little bit. And just kind of hear about him, what he loves. And it wasn't obvious that it was a Christian show. Like, yeah, I go to Moody. I know the purpose of Moody and everything we produce is to reflect the gospel and who Jesus is. But it wasn't so obvious. It's like, oh, that's really interesting about this character. And it's not going to be, like, prevalent until this episode comes out. It's like, oh, this is their mission behind this, and whose hearts are going to be changed because of this idea.
Precisely.
Yeah. And it's me also, just as a creator in general, I strive to create something exactly like this. I don't like Christian media. I think most of it is terrible because it's all created at Christians. Which is so counterintuitive. We need to be creating why do people turn to TV, podcasts, YouTube, and so on? For entertainment. Not to be yelled at. And so we need to create gateways for people to stumble upon this, look at it, be like, okay, intrigued by it, and then look further, deeper into this, right?
We can't be such an isolated bubble of, like, this is for Christians. No, our goal is to reach the unreached. And that the unreached is outside of Moody. It's our followers that have never heard of Moody. Like, Moody students are not our mission.
It's not the white soccer moms.
Heck, well, unless you're out there. Please love Jesus.
Do we want to roll into the question?
Or should we just keep going or have him ask another one?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure. Let's keep looping.
Go for it.
Let's do it.
For you, Mr. Reese.
Okay.
I'll just ask all of these questions together. It's a couple of questions mixed into one. How did you come up with your world?
Okay.
Where did the idea come from? Why Kaizo and Dakaya? So what is kind of unique about the area? How did you create it? Why did you create it?
Why did I pick that?
Why did you pick it, but also how did it come to be?
Okay, yeah.
And why lizard folk?
Okay, so there's a lot there.
Yeah.
First thing you asked, where did the entire thing come from? Where did the world come from? So, first thing, important element, Dakaya is a small portion of a much larger planet called Orbitura. Dakaya is a fraction. Dakaya is just one continent of many. The world Orbitura was actually born out of my desire to play D&D, but lack of ability to do so, because I discovered Dungeons and Dragons 2 days before I went home for spring break when they locked us down. 2 days.
2020.
I discovered it March 4th of 2020.
What
Shout
a
out to
day.
all of my 2020 lovers. Woo!
Yeah. And so I discovered it, went home. I discovered it through Critical Role. Went home, watched the show, loved D&D, and basically had absolutely no avenue to play because I didn't know anybody who played and everybody was locked down. And so what I started doing is I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to start building a world because I ain't never heard of Exandria, which is Matthew Mercer's world. And so I'm going to create one. And so I had drawn out a map earlier that year. I've got a massive map for Arbitura. And I draw maps all the time. Maps are one of my favorite things in the world. And so I drew out this massive world map, and I was like, you know what? I haven't done anything with that yet because I've got piles of them. I was like, you know, I'll just adapt this one into a new world. And so I started creating spaces, creating things. And so my next question as I was world building is, well, how do I fit all, I think we're up to like 63, 64, 65 playable races in D&D 5e. How do I fit them into a world? Okay, well, you know what? Humans developed differently based on the section of the world they were in and the environments they encountered. I'll split them across the world based on common features. So, for example, every single animalic race, anything that shared animal features, such as the Leonin, the lizard folk, the kobolds, I sort of took them and put them all in one section of the world, called that Ferda, and then, you know, separated. So Dakaya is the world that has all of the Fey-like creatures. And I was like, okay, what caused them to all be like this then? Because if they're all very, very different, something had to cause them to be like this. And obviously, I as a person, as a Christian, am not going to use evolution tactics to imply their existence. So we have the beautiful power of magic.
Yep.
And so what I did is I was like, you know what I've never seen before? A world where all of the planes are essentially connected. And so what I did is I then said, okay, I got to fit all these races in here. I've already separated them. They're now separated by the way the planes are breaking through. And so Dakaya had all the fake creatures, and so you know what I said? The Feywild is sort of overflowing in that particular area.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, Omersel, which is a country or continent. It's built up of two main islands. A very large one called Mersel, and the smaller one named O. Literally just smash the names together. Is overflowing with. It's got holes and portals to the Shadowfell, and so that place is overflowing with lots of necrotic energies, which is where you get a lot of different like the concept of vampires are something that are very common to the Shadowfell, and so there's something that are prevalent in Omersel. Then we look at like Ferda. Ferda is the country that I had mentioned earlier that has all of the animal races, and all of those animal races developed or became an element of their worlds because Ferda is overflows with the four elemental planes: earth, air, wind, and fire. Earth, air, fire, and water. And so those were things that became an element of them based on the magic that was suffused into the area. Then I've got another one called Weelf. Weelf is overlapping with the dream plane. And so all of their stuff overlaps with dreams. And so races like the Kalashtar, which come from the realm of dreams and, you know, etc. And so that's where the whole idea for the world came from. Then Dakaya was really just the first place I started. That's why it's there. I have a 188-page document regarding Dakaya right now, and I'm working on developing other continents right now. So like I run a second campaign in Dakaya, and the second campaign has sort of shifted now to another continent. It's shifted to Weelf, the place that overlaps with the Dream Plane, and so I'm slowly developing that. But over quarantine, I had developed about 170 pages of material on Dakaya. And so, of course, when I go to set a campaign, I'm going to set it in Dakaya.
Because you have the most information about it.
Right, precisely. And the reason I picked Kaizo, specifically, was based out of the fact that I was already running another campaign in Dakaya. And originally I had planned to run the campaigns alongside each other. And so what I needed to do is I needed to make sure they didn't overlap. And so I said, well, what's the best way to do that? I stick them in a temple full of a bunch of people who don't want them to go anywhere. And then create a story that is held within that temple.
Yeah.
And
as far as I remember, those two campaigns are kind of interconnected.
They are interconnected in that elements of the Moody&D campaign influence elements of the other campaign, and elements of the other campaign influence elements of this campaign. They're no longer running concurrently. I made a change to the timeline. I didn't change your timeline, though, obviously, because your timeline is the one that's locked in place because it's on the air.
Yeah.
And so they're no longer running concurrently. Moody&D takes place before the other campaign that I'm running, but that's what I did is I essentially put them all in Kaizo. I picked Lizard Folk because I had this image in my brain. The Lost Temple was originally not necessarily a temple filled with anything specific. It was a temple filled with, it was just originally a temple to what was considered to be a dragon god. Obviously not an actual god, but considered to be a god by whatever happened to be there. Lizard folk are natural worshippers of dragons in Dungeons & Dragons lore. And so they were the natural choice for that space. And so that's sort of how we got to where we are. That's all the behind the scenes that came into developing it. And then it was just a matter of fleshing out the people there. And I had done a little bit of that before because all the people in Kaizo were actually brought up as well when I homebrew a lot of stuff. And one of the first subclasses I homebrewed was a homebrew subclass called the Blood Hunter Order of the Druidic Templar, which were a subclass of the Blood Hunter class by Matthew Mercer that used their blood as fuels for natural magics, like a druid would. And I was like, well, who's going to be doing that? Probably lizards. And so I took those ideas and sort of just muddled them all together and threw them in Kaizo.
Yeah. And that kind of ties into another question, if you guys don't mind,
Yeah,
that
go
I
for
had
it.
about the society in Kaizo itself.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of the gospel themes come out here. What really is their philosophy? Why did you give them that kind of personality?
What philosophy are you talking about? There are a lot of different societal philosophies.
Just like their philosophy of peace and kind of quiet and nonviolence.
Yeah, so that actually comes from a couple different places. First thing it comes from, they get their philosophy of peace, nonviolence, etc. And I'm announcing this on this show because I already announced it on Collateral Creatives. But I've got a system of I got a pantheon in my world of 9 quote unquote deities. Only one of them is real, and that one is sort of a, if you will, look at Aslan. Not like it's a human facsimile of attempting to express God. And so that is that one deity, and that's the deity that the lizard folk follow. And that was mentioned in a couple episodes, actually. And so that's where they get that. And that's my way of being able to say these people have Christian values because they follow essentially my expression of the Christian God.
Yeah.
In order to put him into fantasy again, our goal here is to reach non-Christians through Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to lose a lot of Christians if I say they worship Yahweh.
Yeah.
I'm going to lose a lot of non-Christians listeners if I start openly saying, yeah, they worship the God of Christianity. But
if they worship the essence of the God of Christianity.
Precisely. And I mean, if you look at Chronicles of Narnia, so many people have read that, so many non-Christians know about that, and they can kind of pick up on the Christian elements of that. And Chronicles of Narnia is one of those ones that, like, most people know it's Christian in essence, but non-Christians have read it. And so taking similar ideas to the way C.S. Lewis approached that, or even like if you look at C.S. Lewis's Till We Have Faces, where he retells the story of, he retells a story of, I believe it's either the Greek or the Roman deities, and he uses other gods as ways to express the reality of our God. And so taking a similar route, that's how I came up with the concept of the lizard folk. And so that's where they get a lot of their philosophies, is from their Christian values. It's Christian values re-expressed
lizards,
right, in order to express it to a non-Christian audience.
No, that's great. I love it. And it was kind of one of the first things that struck me about the society was just kind of their philosophy, but it really didn't ring through till later episodes. And I'm not going to say much about that. But yeah, some of the conversations that Adra has had with other people have kind of rung that into me. Like, oh yeah, this is where we're going with this.
Yeah, where there is a very clear, like, presentation of Christian values and all that.
Yeah.
And so that's where that came from, was that, and like that was the big thing I have in my notes for Dakaya. Literally the entire first page is what time of year it is in the big campaign that I run outside of Moody&D, and a very long paragraph describing my theology behind why I built the campaign this way, reminders to myself to keep the campaign and to keep the world that way, because I wanted to approach this as theologically upright as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And so that's where that came from, was my desire to do this as well as I could. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I have a question for Reese. We're just gonna keep asking
Okay,
you all
sure.
the questions.
Now that we've got a circle going, let's do it.
Yeah. So, since you're the DM,
Yeah.
as you finish the second episode, were you nervous of a possibility of a party split for the options of exploring the temple? I put dungeon. I don't know why I did that.
No, you're good.
Could you go into the strategy of being the DM and going through these newish characters and interacting with them
Yeah.
as you were possibly pondering that?
Yeah. So
If I could just tag something
Go for
onto
it.
that, one of the questions that I have is very similar to yours. What did you think when you saw our party at first?
Okay, so when I saw your party at first, like I saw everybody's characters before we actually got in the room. Because I got to work with everybody on building their characters, obviously. So I knew kind of what I was walking into. I didn't realize how evil you intended to play Klaus, or how like in that corner of the alignment chart. Not necessarily evil, but like unpinnable within that area.
Yeah.
I did not realize how young Audra was going to be, because Prof. Mac and I decided that 12 minutes before we started recording. I was like, how old do you think she is? No, we decided that in recording, actually. I remember.
No, because y'all were talking about it. I
Yeah.
listened to it the other day. I was like,
Yeah, I was like, how old do you
she's a
think?
child.
Yeah, no, she's 15. She's 16 now, but she was 15 at the time, and I was not expecting her to be playing Audra as such a young character.
It kind of makes sense, though.
Yeah, it really does. But I wasn't expecting it. And Ima, I did not expect. Like, I knew kind of what Sam was going for, because I was in Sam with I was with Sam in 3 campaigns, and so I kind of knew how Sam played. But Ima was just way out of left field, and so my concern was less. I wasn't really worried about them splitting the party, because
I sensed that. Cause I was like, this would have been a great spot.
there were elements where I was like, they could have split the party, but there were a couple things that I knew were going to keep them together. Firstly, Audra is hooked to Ima at the hip. That's how they were. And Klaus generally looks for anything that can do the fighting for him. And Ima was an immediate fast track to that. And so I knew, so long as Ima was in the party, they would stick together. Which is why I also knew that when Ima died, and I'm just going to say that now because this is post that episode.
I've been wanting to say something so bad.
So I knew that when Ima died, that was going to split the party. I knew that was going to do that. And
it did.
And it did. It did precisely that. And so we had to make adjustments. But my big fear was not that they were going to split the party. My big fear is that they were going to split town. That they were going to charge into the mist and try to explore the world outside. That was my big fear.
That was when we came into actual session 1, that was what I thought we were going to do.
I was hoping y'all were going to do that, but you guys kind of like, what?
Yeah, and that's why I was a little sad when we walked into the dungeon, because I was like, oh, all I can do is be deceptive and persuasive.
Yeah.
You can't be in control. Like, I've done this.
See, that was one of the things that I found most interesting about your characters. You immediately you went College of Eloquence.
Yep.
And College of Eloquence is really only useful when you're talking to people outside your party.
Yep.
And then we put you in a
Or
dungeon.
if you're trying to be very secretive with your party.
That's true. And then we put you in a dungeon with nobody but your party.
Yep.
And part of that was just I wanted to force them to interact with each other. I wanted to help them develop their characters, especially because I knew we were only going to get 11 episodes. And those 11 episodes are only about an hour long each, which means about 11 hours of party interaction. And so I wanted to make space for us to actually start doing some real character work. And then also do the classic Dungeons and Dragons, delving into a dungeon.
And interact we did.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so that was really, I wasn't ever afraid of the party splitting.
Yeah.
I knew they would stick together so long as they had Ima, and sure enough, they did.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. No, I honestly, the more I think about it, the more I love how I listened to the first 2 episodes for the first time, and I didn't realize how little we really knew about our characters.
Yeah.
And even to this day, like Friday we're going to be recording. Today's Thursday, by the way.
Yeah.
Friday we're going to be recording another episode, and I'm adding a new thing to Klaus's character that I just thought of
Really?
a couple days
Oh.
ago. It's nothing big,
Cool. I'm all for it. I love it.
but yeah,
It starts off as nothing big.
we keep deepening and making those characters more and more complex, and I feel like that time in the dungeon gave us that possibility to
Yep.
not only develop those connections and relationships between each other, which we're going to talk about later on, so I don't want to mention them right now, but also kind of to flesh out our characters.
yeah.
And what Adra was, Session 0, and what Adra is now are such monumentally
they're
different
so
characters.
different. So different. I listened through episodes 1 and 2, and I was like, that can't possibly be Audra.
Right?
Because there's been so much character progression for her, not just over the first 11 episodes, but then also over the year gap between arcs 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's crazy.
Yep. So, yeah, I love it. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Reese, do you have a question?
Yeah,
I'll just gonna move right on
I
along.
absolutely do. So let's see. Which one do I want to do? You know what? Okay, this is a quick question. I just want to ask this because it was like one of the only ones I got for episode 3. You remember when you tried to cast Earth Tremor up against the wall?
I was laughing so hard yesterday. This is when I was rewatching it. Well, listening, not watching.
Yeah. Let's just say, compared to Reese is like the D&D knowledge and rule god with a small g.
He is
Thank
a
you.
D&D book in human form.
Yes.
Look, okay, I'm just going to say this because it's super embarrassing, but it proves their point. I create a new Dungeons & Dragons character basically every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Can you make me one? I want to see what I would end up being.
Sure, I can make
I mean, we're going to be playing a one-shot with my D&D group where I'm actually going to get to play, and I already created 3 characters for that.
Yeah.
One is a cleric turtle.
Oh, I love it.
I love
it
turtles
so much.
so much.
Portal?
The
Turtle.
Turtle.
It's a race.
It's like they took the word turtle and tortoise, put them together and made
It's
it
a
race.
turtle.
So is it like a teenager turtle?
No, it's not a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
I wish.
But
Yeah.
it's like a humanoid turtle.
I love it. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, compared to Reese, I am a complete noob, especially the first couple of episodes. That was really my first time actually playing D&D. And so I had not really read through all the spells, and all I have at that point is a very general knowledge of how the spells work and how the mechanics work, and my own imagination. So I keep confusing Earth Tremor and Thunderwave, and you can see that in the first couple of episodes.
Oh yeah.
How I keep confusing the two. So I thought Earth Tremor worked from where I was. I create a tremor in the earth and push everything away from me.
Right.
That's wrong. That's Thunderwave.
Yeah.
And so I thought if I put my feet up against the wall, it would create cracks in the wall where my feet are,
Okay.
and we could then just kind of punch through it.
Right.
That's obviously not how it worked.
No.
Right. No.
And Reese made me aware of that.
It was kind of
And-
funny.
Yeah, it was very much like, why are you making me do a dex save?
Yeah. Yeah, but no, so my actual question was just why'd you take Earth Tremor? Because I have looked at the Bard spell list.
Mhm.
I've looked at everything they can do, and it's in the Bard spell list, but it's a very non-traditional Bard spell.
Because I thought it was better than it is.
Okay, that's the
Reese is proving her point. He is a D&D book.
Yeah, I knew there were so many other spells you could take. Like you could take Charm Person at level 1, which, works really well for the build that you were going for.
It
And so-
does, not in the scenario that we were in.
That's true, not in the scenario you were in. And so Earth Tremor was just a confusing spell that I was like, interesting. Because there are other damage dealing first level spells the bards can take that I was like, Earth Tremor's an interesting choice. But I respect it because it's unique.
Yeah. And so I never actually ended up using it, and I did end up dropping it for other better spells
When you leveled up?
when I leveled
Yeah.
up, mostly because I love all the Bard's second level spells.
They're so good.
I'm so sad that I didn't take Cloud of Daggers. It's such a good spell.
Yeah, it is.
It's such a good spell. But yeah, so Earth Tremor was just kind of I read the description,
the rough description.
the rough description, and I just thought that it was a lot better than what it was, because what I was going for
Okay.
was a little bit of damage for Klaus and being able to, if I'm being ganked up on, escape.
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of the spells that I was going for. That's why Thunder Wave, Ray of Frost, and different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just me being a dum-dum.
Okay, cool. Then this, I just wanted to get that one out of the way because it was a small question. But obviously, this is there wasn't a lot of conversation in the first couple episodes. There really wasn't. There was basically nothing. I want to know, what was Klaus thinking about, pondering while they were going through down the dungeon, like seeing these people who originally, like, you looked at Ima as like a protector, and you looked at Audra as like probably socially capable. I mean, you obviously recognized her as a child. Viewed her as a child, but she had proven herself socially capable. And then within the first few hours down there, Ima has broken part of the puzzle, and Audra has broken her nose. So, like, what was going on in your head as you're like I have to imagine there was like they sent me down there with these idiots.
That was partially what Klaus was thinking about, but Klaus was, and I can reveal that right now because it was just this thought process. All Klaus wanted was to get to the end of the dungeon, to find the source of the skeletons and become their lord.
Right.
You just answered one of my questions. I'm just gonna say it. My next question was for Klaus. For someone who has the desire to be the best and last man standing, why did your character try so many dumb, though funny things?
Could you give me a couple of examples?
Earth tremor.
Earth tremor is a prime example. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
And then you wanted Ima to pick you up, and then drop you.
I didn't want him to drop me. He dropped me. He dropped me on his own volition. But
you didn't see that coming.
Of course not. I mean, mostly because I myself didn't see that coming. But
I saw it come from a mile away.
I was like, how else is I always like since that point I've always viewed Klaus as like a cat. Like, you just sort of throw them and they land.
I always saw like, because like the first time Ima like dropped you landed like a cat, but like the next time like you did like a flippy thingy and you like land on your hands, you made it somewhat graceful, but I'm like, he's not gonna keep getting this lucky. He is going to get hurt.
That's the thing with Klaus, and kind of with me as a person as well. It's not necessarily about always succeeding. It's about always making like it look like you succeeded or other people failed.
Interesting.
Even with like later episodes when Adra and then Bran are trying to mess with Klaus, he doesn't give them the satisfaction of feeling like they messed with him. He always,
I appreciate that.
He always tries to come up. Yeah.
What does that reveal about our host, ladies and gentlemen?
Reveals many good things.
Sorry, guys.
So it's not always about winning. It's about making sure that other people lose. And that's kind of the philosophy that Klaus is going into all of this with. So he didn't care if, obviously, Ima turned out not to be the strong protector that he thought he was. And Adra, he never had much faith in Adra. All he wanted to do is get to the end of the dungeon, find the source, and either become Lord of the Source or, over time, take over the source.
Yeah. Or be the hero in the end of they both died and like, see?
Yep. Yeah, just kind of be like, he didn't care if they come out of the dungeon alive.
Right.
It's self-preserving. At the beginning. Yeah, it was very self-preservatory.
Right. It's like a Slytherin mindset almost.
Right. Now, kind of bouncing off that, towards the end, you did start to care whether Ima came out alive.
Yes, I didn't know if we wanted to talk about that.
Well, I mean,
it's rooted in Klaus's backstory and in Klaus's character. I don't necessarily want to.
Yeah, you don't
talk
have to
too
disclose
much about it.
Yeah, you say backstory stuff and that's it.
But seeing Ima and certain things that Ima did changed Klaus's perspective on him.
Okay.
And I also kind of just wanted Klaus to have something new to hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Now, did you originally view Ima as just like a mindless robot?
Yes.
Okay. And so seeing him be a person, was that what changed that mindset?
No.
No, interesting.
A person is just another fleshbag, another minion in the.
Yeah, think like Klaus.
Yeah. Another minion that you can throw at something for your own survival. So no, Ima having a personality did not change that.
Okay. Now, you don't want to disclose what did change that quite yet, I'm assuming?
Don't.
Okay.
I
That's
don't.
totally fine. I was just curious.
Because even if Prof Mac and Bran listen to this, I know that we don't metagame, and that's one great thing about our party, but I don't want to give them that.
The capability.
Or even the struggle.
Yeah,
with
because that maintains the mystery of Klaus.
Oh, yeah. And if Klaus dies maintaining that mystery, even I'm prepared for that.
Yeah, totally.
So
I'm gonna reveal Klaus is my favorite, so please don't.
yes.
bias boast. Host, not boast. Host.
Yes. That's what I was going for.
Okay. Who asked the last question?
I did. I
Okay.
asked the last question. So
Christian.
Since we're already on episode 3, I have 2 questions that I can kind of merge into one.
okay.
Do it.
That darn first puzzle.
Yes.
How long did you think it was going to take us? And what would you have done if I must seal the second palm?
Okay, so there's the classic joke amongst dungeon masters in the D&D world that the best way to come up with puzzles for your party is to Google puzzles for 5-year-olds.
Yep. And it's true. It's true.
Because you guys solved the puzzle 45 minutes after inspecting it.
Mhm.
And all it took to solve the puzzle was you casting a first level spell or second level spell, any leveled spell into one of the palms, and the palms would open respective doors. That's all it was. And of course, you guys had to try absolutely every single avenue. I gave several hints that you needed a more powerful magic source.
Yep.
Several hints. I said several times. The glyphs begin to glow white, start to circle, and then go back down. Or and that was for anything pseudo magical.
At some point, you even literally said it needs a more powerful source.
Yes, I did quite.
You did
literally
say that. I listened to it yesterday.
It needs a more powerful magical source. And I said that quite deliberately. I expected it not to take that long. I expected you guys maybe to spend 5 minutes there.
So you
Yeah.
spent an entire episode on it.
Well, even better. In full honesty, I built the entire dungeon the night before. I was working until 2 a.m. I expected the dungeon to take the next 4 episodes.
The entire dungeon.
The entire dungeon to take the next 4 episodes.
That's something that I learned, and this is completely sidetracking, but that's something I learned as a DM.
Yep. Yeah, you learned it very fast.
Your party will get through maybe half of what you planned for them.
Yeah. And that's because the dungeon fails to account for social elements.
Yep.
Completely fails to account for social elements. It also fails to account for backtracking.
Yep.
I want to poke at something real quick because you and
Okay.
I were talking, and yeah, my whole goal and most dungeon masters, their goal is to try and kill their party. What?
Well, no, the goal is to not kill the party, or to take enough time to kill the party that the party doesn't realize it's happening for any of those who are evil DMs.
Reese.
I'm not trying to kill the party.
No, that's and I think that's a terrible dungeon master
Yeah, no.
philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your role as a dungeon master is to facilitate their story.
Yes, precisely. Yeah, you are not here to tell a story, and you are most certainly not here to intentionally eliminate people from the story. Except in Ima's case, Sam was graduating. I had to do something. But in all those situations...
And it served the story still.
Right, and it served the story. But ultimate job of a dungeon master is always to serve the story of the players. It's to help them tell the story they want to tell. This is why a lot of DMs, and this is why, like, even after session 0, Christian and I had a lengthy conversation talking through what he wanted Klaus to be and any adjustments that he intended to make so that we could most effectively tell the story of Klaus. That's the ultimate goal. And so that's the big thing, is it's never to kill the players. But yeah, going back to the statue, I did not expect it to take that long. Under any circumstance, it was meant to be a simple, because all you had to do was expend 1 first level spell slot. You had 2 people in the party who could do that, and you had Ima, who had like 5 level 1 spell slots at that level because of sorcery points. So I did not expect it to take that long, but I loved narrating all of your creative solutions. But then also I loved when things went wrong. Like when Ima was like, I'm going to cast Mending on it, I'm like, okay, it no longer works. That one is severed.
Yep.
It's gone. The magical capability has ceased. You need to find a new way out of this room. And if Ima got stuck, if Ima had eventually, because we rolled initiative to see if he was going to close that next hand, and if he had closed the next hand, the only way through would have been for you guys to break down one of the doors. Which would have taken you so long because you all had strengths of 10 at the time.
I mean, I had Ray of Frost, which
would have done sun damage, but it would have taken time. And so that was one of the things that I was like, if Ima seals it, you guys have to get even more creative. Because at that point...
Then we already were.
Right. Because at that point, the party becomes desperate. And now you've got to find new ways out. Because the door behind them was locked. And the only 2 doors in front of them would have been locked effectively at that time as well.
But was the door behind us locked, though? That's the next and last question that I have.
The door behind you was locked.
Completely? Like, even if we had gone back?
You could have forced your way through it and broken down the door. It would have never opened and closed naturally before again. Like it never would have worked properly again.
Okay, because I just remember, like, from later episodes, you said that there was a button or some way to release the wall that was behind us.
Yeah, there was a button. You guys pressed that button eventually, but you didn't have the ability to press it at the time.
Okay.
It was in the large
In the
gear
control room,
It
yeah.
was in the control room.
Okay.
And so you didn't have the ability to unlock the door at the time, and so for you guys, it was locked.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
So that was like, obviously, I did enjoy, just selfishly, giving you the false hope of potentially being able to go back and then saying, nope, you're stuck. Figure it out.
Oh, no, I figured that we're not going to have a way back.
Yeah.
Like, that was a given.
It was just a fun thing for me to see Audra do that and be like, oh no, because this 15-year-old for the first time is now actually stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to see the way her character developed out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You kind of answered my question while you're
Okay.
answering his, and it was just kind of like, how as a DM do you interact with their stupid ideas, I guess, of
Yeah.
destroying one hand with mending, and you're like, really, dude?
Yeah.
And so you really just answered it through and through.
Well, I mean, yeah, and there's an element of you let them do the stupid thing.
yeah, it's really funny.
Because like we said before, the DM is here to facilitate, not control.
Exactly.
At no point would I say as the DM, no, Sam, don't do that. You will get stuck.
I want to do that. I'm like, oh no, this is not gonna go well. So
But I looked at it and I was like, I'm going to let him do that, because what it does is it allows them to tell the story that they have collectively decided
and
they're
that's why
going to tell.
Reese is a great DM.
And then it also forces them to be more creative, which is so much of what Dungeons and Dragons is when the players come to the end of their rope and they got to figure something else out.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the only question. That was actually my last question. So Reese, do you have a question?
I do have one more, and this is just a small one.
Go for it.
This is jumping back to episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
Klaus, your first interaction with Ima. As you were sort of trompsing around him, you had your whole fascination with Ima, which I'm assuming, and I don't think I'm wrong in assuming, was probably just based out of you trying to figure out what he was and how you could use him to your advantage.
Yes.
Figure out how you could use him to protect. But you had a whole conversation where you were like walking around him and interrogating him. What were you precisely looking for? Because you asked a lot of very specific questions. You were knocking on him.
You repeated questions.
You put your ear up to his chest. What is it that you were looking for?
So, Klaus as a character, and I'm going to reveal maybe a little bit about him, has absolutely no knowledge of the arcane. He is arcane within him because that's how magic works for bards.
Yep.
They manipulate the weave, which is kind of the energy that magic comes from.
Yep.
But that doesn't necessarily entail a knowledge or understanding of it.
They don't know how it works. They just know they can.
They just know that they can do it, and that's kind of how Klaus works. One day he just realized that he can say something and things happen.
Which is why they're charisma casters, because charisma is the stat for force of will. And so he does it by his will, by his sheer existence.
Exactly. And so Klaus, I mean, I was mostly going for comedic there with like the trotting around and kind of like looking at him, examining him almost like a doctor examines someone, just trying to figure out every single facet about him, but also just to the little bit of knowledge that he has, trying to understand how he could either replicate what he is or gain control over what he is.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of the mindset behind Klaus. Fear and power.
Yeah.
That's those are the two things. Because even money, Klaus doesn't care about money. He cares about like being pompous and being. He knows that other people care about money, so he wants to present himself that way.
Okay.
But he doesn't care about wealth
That
because
actually-
wealth doesn't give power.
Yeah. That actually answers another question that I had. You mentioned how many rings Klaus has on his hands, and one of my questions was that deceptive intention to make yourself look better, or is it a social protection element? And that kind of makes it sound like it's both.
Mm-hmm. Klaus is inherently very paranoid.
Yeah.
Although, sorry, he's not paranoid. He's just ready.
Yeah.
Really ready.
Yeah.
And so the rings is to snuff out someone who might not have the greatest attention towards him.
Yeah.
It's to fool the simple folk who think that he has lots of wealth and then therefore will follow him.
Yeah.
It's more of a facilitator of things rather than, oh, look, they're shiny.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about the rings per se.
Right.
He still, I mean, he likes them. He stole them himself, but
Yeah.
they're not tied to his identity.
Right.
Because Audra was able to steal one, and I don't remember.
Two,
you
actually.
Yeah.
Yes, two, but like the first
And
time.
The first time you didn't do anything at all.
Yeah.
Well, and the first time you missed it, but the second time you let her.
Mm-hmm. And there was a precise reason why I let her,
Yeah.
to then have leverage on her.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Because, and this is something that we'll talk about later, but Klaus never did anything wrong towards Aima and Adra. He never intentionally hurt them at any point.
That's true.
He tried swinging Adra once, but I had intention behind that. I knew why I was trying to do that.
Yeah.
He never gave them a reason to not trust him, but you wanted to trust them, I guess? Or I'm
No, I
not
wanted-
wording this the right way.
Maybe this is going a little too far with everything, but yeah, I never tried to give them a reason to distrust
Yeah.
me.
Mm-hmm.
But they gave me all the reasons to distrust them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you kind of play Klaus as, I mean, you've expressed his moral compass is not the strongest thing in the world, but in regards to all your actions regarding Aima and Adra, you intentionally made yourself effectively trustable. And of course, they didn't trust you.
Inherently.
Right. They didn't trust you. And, this also, this goes into a lot of communication theory elements. Like all of your intonation and body language and all that is deceptive as far as the way you operate. But it does also, but the only reason you were trustworthy regarding Aima and Adra was because you knew they could also be social protection elements. And so there's like, it's a really weird double-sided coin playing Klaus, who does good things for selfish reasons.
Or does
Stupid.
things.
Or does things, yeah.
Yeah.
Or just does things for selfish reasons.
And sorry, keep going.
That can be interpreted that, like, if we look back, like you said, he didn't do anything to cause them to mistrust him. But of course they did mistrust him because, the actions were nearly neutral. And then you take that and combine that with the way Klaus behaves. And of course they distrust him. But from Klaus's perspective, he's like, this is the nicest I've ever been to anybody.
Sometimes. And then later on, we see how much value Klaus really puts into life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It just also kind of comes back to me as a person, where the more I grow up and the more I kind of look at myself, I see words really mean very little to me.
Yeah.
And that kind of reflects Klaus. He can say the most outrageous things. It's
Right.
about his actions.
Right.
And yeah, obviously later on, he kind of proves with his actions that certain things.
Right. Yeah.
Going back to the com theory, like what Professor Cameron in so many books say, like lol and just so many. The medium is the message,
Yes.
and Klaus is proving that that's so true, even on this like totally made up world.
Yep.
So I just think it's a good thing, and also just proves it as in like in Scripture, like Christ being selfless, giving us every reason to trust Him because He is God.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the question, at least in my mind, is what would Klaus have done if they acted differently towards him?
Right. Yeah. If they returned trustworthiness for trustworthiness, and I don't think Aima was ever untrustworthy. I think Aima. What? Do you have something that made?
Nope, I'm not saying anything.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
I don't recall anything.
Me
but
neither.
Also, I was juggling everything. So.
But he was favored towards a 15-year-old, so you have to give. I guess I give Klaus some slack on not trusting.
No. I'm not saying that
Or
Aima ever
just-
did anything wrong.
Yeah.
Aima wasn't inherently incredibly distrustful.
Right.
I mean, Sam was, but Aima wasn't necessarily.
Right. Precisely. Yeah. Well, Sam is. I've played several games with Sam. Sam tends to play a lot of characters that are like, they're complex people. He always finds a way to make a complex character, even from people like he'll take stereotypes and make them complex. And I don't know how he does it.
I've
but-
never interacted with Sam,
Yeah.
only through people, so I wouldn't know this. So this is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But like all of his characters are like that, where it's like there's always an element of his characters that you don't expect.
Yeah.
But Audra, like you said, Audra was extremely proved several times over that she was not to be trusted. Several times over, stole from you twice, and especially in Klaus's mind, failed to protect him while he was sleeping. That was something that happened.
That's something that I still mock her about.
Right. And so, like you said, it's just, yeah, I mean, there's so There's so much going on. And that's one of the beauties of D&D.
Yep.
Is there's so much going on.
And there's so much complexity and beauty in the storytelling.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't have any more questions. Do you have any more questions?
Not really, no.
I'm out. I did everything.
Alrighty.
Awesome.
That was great. I have not thought of how to end this show.
Cool.
That's the one thing I
always
haven't think of. So, hope y'all enjoyed. Please tune in again, and bye.
See ya.
Peace.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Moody&D Gone Rogue. You can listen to the rest of this Moody&D channel on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to follow the Moody&D Instagram at Moody_N_D. And while you're there, you should drop some questions in our Gone Rogue questions highlight. Once again, I'm your host, Rachel Sanders. Hope to see you next time.